Hello and welcome everybody. So after quite a while, I'm finally back with another photo critique today with 10 pictures from Ozire. And I just wanted to let you know real quick that any of you who have submitted pictures over the last months, I still have all of them on a list and I'm gonna do a critique on hopefully most or even all of them as soon as I get the time to do so. So just wanted to let you know that I haven't forgotten you. I just haven't gotten the time to do them yet. So let's go into the pictures and actually into Lightroom to review the pictures and of course also give you a quick editing feedback on what I would do in terms of that. So in this picture, in terms of the overall composition and, well, the picture itself, I think it is very solid. You of course have this very beautiful road which leads into the picture. I love the placing of that road from the bottom right going into the middle, which then kind of continues even with the line from these hills in the background. I think you've done a great job on having a lot of things in your picture, but at the same time not making it cluttered and having it in a very organized and structured way. I also love all of these small, for example, this small forest or these trees right here, this little house on the top. It all works very well together. The only thing that I don't really like is this lens flare right here, although it is definitely not that severe and not that, that disturbing, so I don't really mind it too much, but you could go and grab an adjustment brush and perhaps go a little bit into the green tint and try to get rid of that even more, but once again, not a big deal. Other than that, I think it's once again a really good picture, but editing-wise, I would actually do something to it. So I think it is a little bit perhaps too flat and too boring in terms of the color scheme other than it could be. So for example here, I would go a little bit more into the magenta tint and maybe even bring the overall color a little bit more into the blues, and then in exchange go down into the split toning and just add some warm tones in the highlights so you have more differentiation from shadows to highlights, and then maybe even go into the shadows and even add some additional blue, but really just a hint of blue in the shadows. So let's see, another thing that you could probably do is just go a little bit into the minus clarity to make especially these textures within the grass a little bit less pronounced, which overall makes the picture a little bit more simplistic, and I don't think it's really anything missing if you don't have this kind of grass so pronounced. And I really like the picture a bit more. Of course, there's a lot more that you can do. For example, dodge and burning would be another thing. But once again, I don't want to edit them like fully with 10 minutes for each picture. I just want to give you a quick overall feedback. And by the way, I would maybe even make one part of the picture a little bit brighter by grabbing a graduated filter over the side right here, making a bit brighter, and maybe even mix that with even more warm tones, and then grabbing another one over parallel of the other one of the previous one, and just go a bit into the minus exposure, so that way you just have even more differentiation and even more interest in terms of the lighting scheme. So let's just quickly see before any adjustments and after. Now perhaps you might want to go here into the HSL tool and even enhance the green tones a bit, but overall I really like personally the difference a bit more. It's a bit more. Oh, by the way, a thing that I just realized, yeah, it would really look good by bringing down the highlights a little bit. And I think you kind of change that look into something that maybe looks a bit more like it was taken a bit later in the day with a much softer lighting scheme. But once again, of course, it's all up to you. I'm just trying to give you some insights and some additional ideas. So after this very long first picture, let's go on to the second one and probably spend a little bit less time here. And here, I really feel like there's an ugly side to this picture, and there's such a beautiful side to this picture. It's so amazing with the lighting here. It works so well together, this warm lighting. It is at the same time very soft. It looks really, really good. but then you have this ugly tree as well as this thing right here on the left. So at very least, clone out this thing, this pole here on the left, and you could leave the tree in. By the way, of course, you would want to make a much better job with that, but you could even leave the tree in, but definitely clone that pole out, and also I would crop it down from below, just like that, just so you don't have this kind of, this thing right here on the bottom, but rather a more simplistic picture. And by the way, you could probably even crop down some of that sky from above. So this would be the first option to go with for this picture. Just imagine this ugly thing right here cloned out. And then the second option would just to make it a lot more cropped and a lot more focused on the actual building right here, which I do think it kind of misses some of that aerial feel and some of that just general mood of the picture, but it also has a very unique style to it that I do think works in some way. Although, yeah, perhaps there's a little bit of foreground missing if you would have it that tight. So I think after all, the best option is really to keep it that way. Once again, clone out or crop out some of that foreground or some of that bottom, and crop out some of that sky as well, and then of course get rid of that ugly thing. Other than that, I think especially in terms of the lighting, it looks absolutely gorgeous. And usually I'm not really too big of a fan of this general, almost, what should I call it, this kind of warmish, washed out look, but it works so well with this photo. So I think it's an absolutely great picture. There's just a little bit of editing required. So let's see here. Okay, so let me see the settings first of all. And by the way, this critique is a little bit longer, maybe a little bit more of a ramble than really a structured critique or anything like that. But I feel like I can give you a much more authentic critique and a much more authentic feedback on your pictures that way. But anyway, so you shot this at 30 seconds, f3.5, ISO 400, 22mm with an 18-55 kit lens. So because you shot this with an 18-55 kit lens, that means you have a crop sensor body, and with crop sensor bodies, you especially want to shoot stars as wide as you can get, because otherwise, if you don't shoot at absolute maximum wideness, you're gonna get this motion blur in the stars. And general motion blur in the stars can work as an additional artistic effect, but I feel like if you just have it a little bit like this, it really looks like an accident, and I'd much rather have crisp stars. Additionally to the motion blur, they are also not really in focus, so here what I would do is definitely make a separate exposure for the stars and a separate exposure for the trees in the foreground, and also adjust the focus within these two pictures. But by the way, so you have an 18-55 kit lens, you definitely want to shoot stars at 18mm then, and you don't really want to go above 20 to maybe 25 seconds, because then you will really get motion blur in the stars like this. So other than that, I don't think this is too great of a picture either, because the trees, even though I like the general idea, you have a lot of other things such as this blurry stuff right here, or another tree, as well as this blurry thing right there, and you also have kind of the moon or perhaps a street light hidden behind a tree, and you have cut off these trees, so it's really, I feel like it's just a snapshot. It's a good try, but as a whole, it just is up to nothing. Once again, this is called Dead Honest Critique, so I'm gonna say it how I believe it to be. And if you would really align all of these trees much more carefully, if you would make a separate exposure with the stars in the background, and if you would really pay a lot more attention on the details and the cutting off and all of that, I feel like it could be a good picture. But once again, how it is right now, I don't like it at all. Then, this is amazing. I love this picture. Now, this immediately reminds me of the video game Fallout and the general style there. Huh. It's really interesting. Yeah, it has definitely a very fine artish kind of touch to it. I absolutely love the long exposure, the clouds in the sky, they just look beautiful, and look at the differentiation in the exposure of the sky. So this is a very soft picture, and it would not work to just bring up the whites like crazy. It would really ruin the overall mood, but I absolutely love that look, it looks so good. And if I go down here, you have this trail of the cars from the long exposure, which I do think works really well as an additional line pretty much to lead you through the picture. I'm sure if you would just have the road without these lights from the cars, it would be a lot less distinctive and a lot more boring, but that way you really make it a very distinct line. And also in terms of the exposure, you have it kind of a little bit brighter in the foreground towards the right, and then you have it a little bit darker and more hazy and more perhaps even misty towards the left. I absolutely love this picture, by far the best one that I've seen so far from you, and the only thing that I would consider here is to make it a bit more... Yeah, actually never mind, it really looks a lot better without the panoramic aspect ratio. The fact that you have so much sky in this picture really works. It gives it a very different atmosphere, a much more discarded and kind of remote area feel and mysterious. Anyways, absolutely great picture. I love it really a lot. This right here. Okay, so this looks very cinematic, I feel like, but it also looks a little bit overdone, so especially in terms of the textures here, it almost seems like you shot this perhaps as a JPEG and really edited your picture a lot. And I would definitely go into the minus clarity here. Now, it does increase some of that dynamic, but if you just look at the textures, now this tree looks very overdone and kind of like it has some artifacts. But by bringing down the clarity, it makes it look a lot better. And once again, if you would like to have that dynamic back, you can always bring up the whites and have the best of both worlds. Now, to the actual picture, I really like the color and the lighting. I like that you have a road here which leads you through the picture and kind of even leads you to the house in the background. I like the fact that you have the foreground of this road a lot darker than the rest. It really helps you to give some differentiation and lead you into the picture, but I feel like that the graduation is a little bit too harsh, and also the overall composition. Now, some of these trees on the left aren't really too interesting. You have this tree right here cut off, you have this hill with these trees a lot too close to the edge in my opinion. You have a very noisy background with very washed out colors, and generally I feel like it's a good attempt for the picture. It is a kind of cinematic composition and everything, but as a whole it's not a really great standalone picture. So yeah, once again, if you would work on this, reshoot it, I think you can end up with a much better picture, a really good one in fact, but how it is right now, it's not bad in any way, but it's just not that great. It's just an alright picture, I'd say. So let's see here. Yeah, so once again, you kind of have a little bit of a cinematic view here, definitely way less than this picture right here if you would ask me, and I don't like this tree in the foreground at all. I think it really takes away so much attention. It's a super boring tree. You also hit the sun behind it in a kind of half way, which I really don't think works very well either. What I would do here is first of all crop this to perhaps a little bit more of a cinematic aspect ratio. So let's just try this one right here. I think this would work a lot better. And of course you would want to reshoot it without the actual tree, and also I would maybe wait until a car drives down and overall just make the whole lighting scheme a little bit more dramatic, especially towards the roads. For example, if I were to show you a real quick example, just make it look as if the sun really spilled a lot of light here on the actual road, and kind of make it very overdone, but at the same time a little bit interesting, because how the picture was at the start and how it still is with this ugly tree right here, I really don't think it is up to anything. Then let's see here. This is actually interesting. If I just go farther back and I look at the picture, I feel like this is really interesting. So compositionally, I like the placement of your horizon, I like the placement of that guy, I love the posture of that guy looking in towards the left, I love the positioning of the sun, and I even love the different shades and lightings within these structures of the sand. And by the way, you have really a lot of color noise here. You can very easily fix that by going into the detail and bring the color slider to the right. But the thing that I don't like about this picture is that it really looks a little bit overdone. So especially in terms of the halos, I mean, the halos are crazy in this photo. But even within the foreground, it looks a little bit harsh. Perhaps a bit of minus clarity could fix that. But there's definitely no going away from these crazy halos right here. And by the way, you could kind of decrease some of that effect from the halos by going into the adjustment brush and going into the minus clarity, and then just kind of brushing over these halo-ish edges. But even then, it really doesn't fix it completely if it has that much halo from the start on. And also, it seems that you perhaps have made a separate exposure for the sky and one separate for the foreground, and then just merged both of them together, and from there gotten all of this halo. But the thing is, the sun is still overexposed, so it's kind of weird that you didn't do a proper HDR from the foreground exposure all the way into the medium exposure, all the way until you have all of the details within the sun. I feel like you could have really gotten a much more refined and much better picture at the end from this. And by the way, I feel like the color in the sky, it doesn't work that well. I would definitely make it a lot less greenish. Now, I'm actually not sure how you could fix that in post, because it is really so severely green, but perhaps if you would play around with vibrance and the HSL tool and everything, you could make it look a lot better. So once again, in terms of the actual composition and placement of everything, I feel like it's a very good picture, but because of this halo, because of the blown sun, because of the very uneven adjustments, the ugly greenish color in the sky, it really ruins all of that, and it's really a shame. But once again, I think you had the right intention with that composition. So then, let's go on to the next one, and this is... Okay, so this is not the most interesting picture, but I do think that you could make it work. So once again, I would do an HDR here, so you at least have a little bit of detail within the sky. And even if you don't necessarily have any structure or colors or even clouds within the sky, I would definitely make it a lot darker, even a much more than I did right here, just because it takes away so much attention, this very large spot of the sky, and it's just way too bright. But in terms of the rest of the picture, I actually think it is very solid. I really like the way that you've arranged this tree, once again leading towards the other trees, leading towards this kind of hillish thing, which I think works really well. And of course, not to forget this foreground element, I really like this as well. The feel of looking through a gate, but I would definitely, by the way, grab an adjustment brush here with plus clarity really a lot, and go over the foreground just so you pronounce all of these textures and all of these cracks within the rock, within the stone a lot more. And I really think you would make it a lot more dramatic and a lot more distinct that way. And other than that, maybe even increase the overall clarity a little bit, and maybe even go into the split toning and just add a little bit of warmth within the highlights, and then in exchange go into to the shadows and just add a little bit of blues there. And yeah, So once again, I really like the general concept of the picture, I like the composition, but I feel like you would have had to shoot this differently to really get the most out of the picture. It really makes you feel like you're in that place. So I'm just gonna say it's a good picture, but I feel like with some other shooting and some other editing, you could make it even better. Then let's see here, I think we're nearing the end. This is very interesting. So it's a very abstract picture, and actually before I go into anything else, I want to talk about this abstract look of it, because clearly you don't have any foreground, you don't have any background, you just have these stones and the water, which I think works really well together, but you have these stones on the top which lead you out of the picture and really make it look very weird. So because this is an abstract picture anyways, it really doesn't work if you just have a very small portion of stones leading into the background, which there isn't really a background. So I would definitely crop it and make it truly abstract, and that way it's a lot easier to focus on the actual stones and the water without this weird distracting thing on the top. So after you've cropped the picture, I think this is absolutely amazing. So the colors are very interesting. You have these kind of bluish stones going into the more warmish tones, going into the really saturated warm tones right here. I love the fact that you can see through the water. And a very little thing that really makes the picture though is this little rock. So as you can see here, it really looks like this rock is missing from this place. And I don't know if this was previously like it or if you did it on purpose. I'm gonna assume you did. But it is so essential for this picture, because without it, it would be a little bit too cluttered, I'd almost feel, and it would just not be as interesting. But by removing this rock right here, you create a point of interest in the top, and by placing it in the water right there, you also create an additional element of interest in the bottom, but at the same time you have this connectedness that also connects the foreground to the background, or pretty much the water to the stones, because I don't really feel like you can call this really foreground or background. But once again, it is so vital to this picture that you have this stone removed and in the water. I also love the placement here on towards the right. I think it's a really great picture, very abstract, very simplistic, but at the same time it really works together and I absolutely love it. Very interesting and very clever what you did there. And I believe this is gonna be the last picture. And here, okay, so you definitely have a lot of attention on this ladder, but I feel like the ladder isn't really the most interesting thing you have in this picture. So you have this kind of donkey or whatever it is, you have this landscape with these very interesting houses. The only way that I can really see this picture work is one, either a stock photo, where your main emphasis is really this ladder, or perhaps in a photo story where it's just kind of a picture of many where you show off a certain area or perhaps someone's house and you just have a separate picture for the ladder right here. But as a standalone picture, I would have loved to see less emphasis on the actual ladder and a more in focus background. And yeah, so it's not a bad picture at all, but I just feel like there could be so much more to this picture, so many more elements that are relevant rather than just a ladder. So I feel like this is it. Yeah, let's go on and go back real quick to your Flickr page. And I have to say you have some very interesting pictures. I really like your style to your pictures. I think it's a very warm, a very saturated style, but it works really well with the pictures that you shoot. And even your pictures that I don't really think are too great, you still have some element in these pictures or some point of interest that could really make a good picture if you were to do it a little bit differently. So if I just go through all of the pictures real quick, this really great picture, everything works together. Then here, this is also a pretty good picture, although if you would have shot this from a different angle, you could have probably gotten an even better picture, but definitely crop out from the bottom as well as the sky, and remove this pole thingy right here. Then there, this is kind of a nice try, but it didn't work out that well. Then here, absolutely gorgeous picture, I love it, would not do anything to it, I really think this belongs into a gallery. And then here, nice concept, didn't really work out too great at the end. Same with this one, and this one right here, I feel like it's a good picture, just a way too bright sky that takes way too much attention away. And I would definitely put more emphasis on the foreground gate or whatever this is with some clarity. Then here, absolutely gorgeous picture. I feel like this is maybe even my second favorite because it is so simplistic, but you did make it work by removing this little stone and placing it in such a good way. But I would definitely crop out the very top so it is a lot more simplistic and less distracting. And then the last picture, it's a good picture if it's really all about the ladder, but I feel like you could do much more to really incorporate the ladder in the landscape in a much better way. So once again, this was a very long critique and it's kind of different to what I've done previously, but I just wanted to try out a little bit of a different way of doing an old format. Feedback is always greatly appreciated. But Uzair, I hope you found some of these tips and techniques helpful. Of course, it goes without saying, these are just my personal opinions, and you shouldn't do what I say just for the sake of doing what I say. You should just look at the points I pointed out and then decide for yourself whether something makes sense to change or not. So I think it's really interesting to make a longer version of the Dead Honest critiques. But anyways, I'm gonna sign out here. Thank you very much for watching, keep on editing great pictures, and hopefully I'll see you in the next episode. Take care.